New Victoria 3 gameplay returns, in a playthrough that started as a humble Prussian campaign, moved its way across quickly and gobbled up a few German states to provide the North German Federation, and now looks to unify Germany. As a formidable foe and major power, thank you so much for helping me reach my subscriber goal of 30,000 subscribers before Victoria 3. I won't ramble about that though, let's put that energy to one side and instead move through into what is probably the spiciest gameplay that we'll see in terms of conflict and the expansion of Germany. Also, one of the most politically turbulent times, and it starts with the Polish people and it really escalates from there. This is a doozy, and it could very well be the last new gameplay that we see before the release of Victoria 3 on the 25th of October. So let's talk about what it involves. And the start here is really about forming the German Republic, a newly formed one at that, as part of our new federation. Here they look to perhaps adjust those high tax rates, but really the topic of conversation here is radicals and infamy. The radicals, thankfully, as you can see, are coming down. That's largely thanks to us meeting the revolutionary requirements to spread liberalism a little bit further. There's also battles going on around the world. We'll continue to look at them every now and again. More importantly, though, is that infamy. That's the degree in which we are perceived as a threat by other great powers in particular. And it's key because it can trigger certain things. It's increased by our actions, by claiming war goals and causing diplomatic incidents. And the impacts are fairly wide-reaching, including the attitude of other nations towards us, and the cost of our future diplomatic actions. Most notably, though, as we look to really unify the German Revolution here, it also enables great powers, such as England or others, to carry out a cut-down action against us, to kind of slice us back down to sides. The other thing that we're doing here is potentially bringing in a defensive pact with France. Hopefully that might keep the Austrians at bay. We're also looking at the newly marginalized interest group here, the evangelized church. They, alongside the armed forces, the more conservative voices, along with landowners, are really being pushed to one side here, as the German state looks to really form as a republic, and that is just what we're going to do. The election results are a little bit of an odd one. They can continue to support our seemingly one-party state that is forming here in our weird new German Republic. You'll see various events come up that continue to support the industrialists and other key people within that one political party in North Germany here. It's very unusual, and it's taken a big shift away from where we started. I should also mention here, by the way, there'll be time cards below if you want to jump around through different sections, if you need to bounce back or potentially move forward, if you want to jump ahead and have a look at some war gameplay. Moreover, though, really what we're seeing here is the formation of the German state. They're building the last little building blocks that we need to get the Parliamentary Republic of Germany. Of course, at the moment, we are still led by a monarch, an autocracy at that. Revolutionary flair is at an all-time high now, though. Election results in our favor. We're eyeing up potential revolt as well. Take a look at this. Britain, no longer led by Victoria. It's now Willie III. But more importantly, bam, we are now a parliamentary republic. The Parliamentary Republic of Germany. This radicalizes those opposed to us, who continue to push the restore autocracy revolutionary spirit against us, somewhat hindering that yield up in the top there, that legitimacy yield, which of course is required to help us push through laws and ultimately help our global ranking. However, revolution continues to spread across the continent. You will see that we've not only adopted it a little bit within and around our borders, but also we're trying to spread it to Austria. The key developments that are playing out here for the developers in their gameplay, which is of course linked below in full, by the way, and I'd recommend you check it out, is that revolution begins to spread close to our borders in German states as well. Hanover in particular, now revolutionary. This sort of allows or requires us, I guess, to form nations within our own territories and gobble up some more of those revolutionary German states. Here we see the nation-forming UI and all of the different territories that we could need for North German and South German unification to pull together the Republic of Germany. Now, new and improved, the parliamentary version. Here they set about eyeing up these states, while also having a look at our potential neighbours or those who could threaten us, and of course those glorious trains, which continue to be a part of their domestic policy throughout this game, really industrializing our core and bringing trains throughout the world. Egypt, our once ally, is looking huge, but they're not really much of a focus anymore. The gameplay is very much now shifting towards how can we bring the Parliamentary Republic of Germany to get its sort of, dare I say, the borders that it is owed, or at least in terms of this playthrough. We're looking at those northern territories in Austria, also parts of Denmark, and those remaining German states that continue to not be unified within our borders. But of course, it's important to note as we move through that we're not the only power here looking to unify Germany, and Bavaria, who are our ally at the moment, may not necessarily stay that way. Spoiler alert, they're looking to gobble up some Germanic states as well. Radicalism continues to fall within our borders now as the revolutionary spirit has somewhat subsided. You'll notice that our main goal now is to unify Germany. We're not so much focused on internal politics. Here I mean those external territories that aren't quite part of our Germany just yet. The cost of bringing some of these territories in and really upholding our new level of statehood is costing us a lot of bureaucracy, one of those key resources up in the top left, the 4 of them. To fix this, they set about building government administration buildings. I know, I can hear you yawning in the distance at the thought. But as you can see, the cost of incorporating these states is fairly high, although it's got to be said, relative to other potential costs, and as they noted in the gameplay, it's actually not as bad as it could be, thanks to the fact that we share a common culture and that kind of thing. A little bit more on that later. Anyway, they continue to build up the state, not just to get us more bureaucracy so that we can sort of formally connect the state and bring in extra territories, but also they're looking at lifting up the overall quality of life in this very much one-party, quote, free-minded state. Now, you'll notice as a parliamentary republic, no longer led by a king, they consider bringing taxes down, but decide, actually, let's focus on pushing through some more liberalized laws. On the one hand, we have secret police and censorship, and on the other hand, we're a parliamentary republic. It's an evolving situation that plays out throughout the entire stream, and we really are getting to the meat of it. Here, speaking of getting to the meat of it, we also see a potential alliance with Britain. At least they have their eyes set on some territory, and they're saying, hey, why don't you come and join us? You could help us in this fight. Maybe you can get something. Join us in our diplomatic play. This one may or may not be moved on, but Great Britain will play a large role as we move through into the second part of the video, which is all about that conflict. The other thing to note, I guess, is the Germany that we're building now is a secular Germany, where buildings have been adjusted, their production methods and that kind of thing have shifted away from religious education and towards that secularity. We're also a one-party, quote, free-minded, democratic state ready for expansion. And that begins here, as we start to look to transfer subjects and confirm our puppeting goal, and our first target is Denmark. You can see who could be potential allies, threats. Bavaria's still on our side at the moment. Still. Spoiler alert. But also we see who could potentially be drawn into the conflict. The developers then move to mobilizing for war. They mobilize generals and troops to the front line. You can see them assign the generals with their troops sort of automatically in tow. And you can see them being sort of forced or focused in certain areas. The next thing that they're doing is replacing a general that has become unalived through old age. They're also looking to potentially promote existing ones. Throughout both of these, whether it's promotion or recruiting new ones, they're paying special attention to the generals themselves, because these generals, like the political leaders and rulers in this game, have their own traits as well. It could be traits like more aggressive frontline push, or better equipped, better supplied troops. You name it, they have their own preferences and their own combat bonuses that they bring to the battlefield as well. A battlefield that in Victoria 3, maybe in comparison to some other strategy games, is less hands-on. This is, of course, an economic political simulator where military and warfare is but one part of that puzzle. And you'll see that play out as this war gameplay progresses. War goals are also justified, and maybe we can sway Sweden into coming in. We consider it, at least, here. We don't really need them as an ally, but, you know, we could maybe bring them in as well. And just like that, bam, it's over and done with. What? Yeah, the Danes didn't really have a lot. They didn't really have a lot. So what happened there was the pen was mightier than the sword, achievement get. The primary war goal was enforced as Denmark basically just kind of fell over and said, take what you want, it's fine. We also see one territory not quite fall in line with us, even though they backed down and ceded territory. I think it was Holstein from memory that we're mucking around with here. That actually was more of an independent state rather than falling under our control from memory. However, we're also able to relatively quickly make that a dominion and move on. And they were a little bit like, oh, okay. Obviously, they knew that this could happen, but they were sort of left a bit twiddling their thumbs. They're like, oh, we've prepared for war. We've got these generals ready. And then, bam! Nope. It's real war time. Austria also wants a piece of the puzzle, perhaps feeling threatened by a newly sort of bolstered, strong-armed German republic. The Austrians declare war. And it's important to note here that while we may have slightly better gear than them, we are absolutely outnumbered. If you've watched my previous videos, you'll know at a rate of like 3-1 at some instances and at some levels of our army. Their population is the thing that potentially threatens us the most. But of course, this is where warfare really kicks in. Bavaria backs us up, and we've deployed our frontline troops in the north on those sort of smaller German states, but also in the south. We are fighting on two fronts. We could look to France to bring them in, not so much. They also attempted to try and add extra conscripts. There weren't really any others available. However, Britain is available and does have a taste for Austria. This will come in handy a little bit later on. It's important to note that in terms of war goals here for this conflict, we are eyeing up those northern territories of Austria, those ones that we consider to be German and should be part of our new German Republic. They have a humiliation goal against us, and they're also seeking reparations for their time and money, I suppose. We look to push these conquer goals here, and now you can see it live in front of your eyes. As the developers are looking to really grab those specific territories, not so much for their resources, but to try and get that German unification goal, that journal entry. If you haven't joined me for previous videos, it's kind of like a quest line for us in a way. It's not a hard goal, we don't have to follow us, but it's useful to steer us in a gameplay direction in a game that doesn't have a definitive endpoint and kind of allows you to tell your own story within a grand strategy sandbox. Looking briefly across the sea, you can see that there's all sorts of things going on in the US, Confederacy fighting the United States. But back in Europe, where the conflict really heats up here, it's actually so hot that it's a little bit unclear whether we can even come out of this feeling successful. The developers toy with on and off a couple of times, declaring white peace in numerous situations, mainly with that front line with Austria. But because we're stretched across two fronts at the moment, you can see we're doing all right, and bam, there's a capitulation. That's fantastic news, because now we start to see that consideration of having to split ourselves across two fronts go away. And this is the first springboard toward victory in the German fight against Austria. And here comes the second one. That's right. It's the invasion. The Great Britain invasion of Austria. Thank you, Britain. Even though Victoria isn't at the helm, their new leader, Willy III, seems to be doing a pretty good job. This is really what helps them win this fight. They could have done it, of course. They had better gear, not as many troops. But this invasion is key. It helps our push towards Vienna. Potentially also weakening the line that was holding us off. This really lets us surge through. Like the Confederate States of America are attempting to surge through the United States. It's important to note here, President Lincoln is back at the helm. Anyway, back to our conflict, and wham bam thank you ma'am, the invasion by the British has just propelled our efforts. And it really has. You'll see here in the next sort of minute or two of gameplay, we've just sweep through. We sweep through into Vienna, that's the capital of Austria. Britain slices Austria in two. And we also continue to do a little bit of sweet talking with Russia. Russia is, of course, one of the major powers in this world, very close to us. We share a land border with them. We can't afford to have them get involved in this conflict. So we reroute our troops down to the front line with Austria here. I think there might have been a little bit of a glitch that had sort of unassigned them or something. I don't think they all needed to be rerouted at this point. But either way, it is kind of a nice fresh start to help our new push. All of the generals with their conscripts or what have you have mobilized onto the front line with Austria, and we are able to just smash through. Britain, as I say, has sliced it in two down by that Italian frontier, and look at that spearhead making its way through to the capital. This is ultimately what helps them secure victory, at least in this front. And it really is that push, although we may have been able to do it on our own right, but it really is that push that helps us secure the victory. And you'll see here, in a moment of absolute German glory, capitulation, Austrian capitulation. This finally allows them to push through this deal and secure victory, grabbing those territories and potentially unifying a new Germany. A new Germany that isn't necessarily done just yet, though. Here we see back again the nation formation screen as they look across the different territories, making sure that they're getting all the right ones. You'll notice they can mouse over the top right, just figure out exactly the ones that they need. However, with Austria ceded, or at least the parts that they wanted, they can then start to turn their attention towards Bavaria. You'll notice that their taxes are incredibly high at this point to try and keep the military online. Their GDP is failing a bit as well. The war is proving incredibly expensive. However, their authority and other jurisdictional or sort of resources that help them govern are still actually doing all right at this stage. They've nabbed that part of Austria, and now they're turning to Bavaria. As I mentioned earlier on, Bavaria is no longer their friend. Again, we see the nation formation screen as they look to make sure that all those little territories are all lined up and neatly aligned to join North and South Germany and unite them under one banner. This was the entire mission of the 3 hours worth of gameplay, and now it comes together. With the fall of Bavaria, how dare they try and make their own Germany? It's complete. They did it. It was around 3 hours worth of footage, but they did it. And in the last sort of minute or so of the video here, we'll look around the rest of the world to see how those other revolutions in China and America and Australasia and everywhere else ended up playing out, with President Abraham Lincoln, surprisingly, at the helm yet again. This was probably the most interesting gameplay that we've seen so far, at least in terms of building a story and sticking to it. Although, to be fair, of course, it changed a lot. The revolutionary winds really blew. We started as Prussia, secret police, autocracy, moved our way through some radical changes. Hey, New Zealand, look at it go. And shifted our way through into a unified, not just North, but also South German republic. And a parliamentary republic at that. We ditched the monarchy, we brought in an elected official, although it's important to note that, of course, this Germany was ruled by but one party. So we were a democracy, maybe in name, but not necessarily other ways. Thank you very much for joining me. I think this will probably be the last gameplay breakdown before Victoria 3 releases, although you can bet your backside I'll be covering this game as it releases on the 25th of October. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.